Super excited to talk with you because I'm a huge fan of yours. You were a member of a hit Netflix reality show in Korea, and also your tech background is just huge. 2 years at Adobe, 3 years at Netflix, 6 years at Meta, 2 years at TikTok. Where do you think these social media sites are going to be using AI in the future?
It's really about personalization. So I've been in advertising for most of my career.
What's your advice to people looking for a job in the tech industry?
You have to be selfish.
Growing up in Korea, why you moved to America?
Yeah, I always wanted to study abroad. So my mom actually sent me to Canada, New Zealand, Australia during summers. I think Koreans are generally super hardworking, and like every time I work with Koreans, like their work quality is so good. And I do think there's talent arbitrage opportunity.
How did that experience change your life?
The filming itself was very therapeutic for me. I think that shows, in a way, destigmatizing divorce.
So what's next for you now that you've left TikTok?
I'm actually working on...
Welcome to the Imagine AI podcast. I'm your host, Chris Madden, and today we have with us Sora Lee. Sora, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually, this is my first podcast in over a month because I've been on a little bit of paternity leave. I'm happy to say we welcomed our second daughter into the world here, and she's doing well.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. Well, Sora, I'm super excited to talk with you because I'm a huge fan of yours. You were a member of a hit Netflix reality show in Korea, and also your tech background is just huge. You've been in tech for over a decade, 2 years at Adobe, 3 years at Netflix, 6 years at Meta, 2 years at TikTok, which is your most recent stint. And you've just left TikTok, if I'm accurate. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I left as of last week.
Last week. Wow. So fresh off leaving TikTok. So I think the top question on everybody's mind who's a TikTok user is what is going to happen to TikTok on January 19th when this deadline for it being shut down, divesting, or being kicked out of the country? What's going to happen?
I think it's uncertain. They'll have to make significant moves to comply, which I would assume that they would. And, either through divestment or increased transparency measures. And given how large the user base is, I think it'd be pretty difficult to just shut it down. It's going to piss off a lot of users who are also voters. I don't think that's what's going to happen. And, this could set a precedent for how a global company should navigate U.S. politics going forward.
Yeah, definitely. And so January 19th, do you think that it's going to be the can's going to be kicked down the road? Like there'll be some judgment and they'll kick it down 6 months and wait for the Trump administration?
So honestly, I'm not a spokesperson, right? I'm just a former employee. And if I were to guess, they will probably make some changes on their end to comply. And I'm just a naturally optimistic person, so I think it'll be fine, but don't quote me on that.
I mean, I'm an avid TikTok user and posting on TikTok, and it's so great for virality, and they really have a very unique algorithm. And I really do hope they find a way to keep it in the US here.
Yeah.
What's a day in the life of Sora Lee at TikTok?
I was their global head of product marketing for creative solutions within SMB. So it's a mouthful. I am the liaison between product and engineering and sales and advertisers. And in this case, SMB advertisers. And often their biggest bottleneck is creative. Either they don't have good enough creative or TikTok enough creative, or they don't have just enough volume of creatives. So we would have products that help advertisers come up with creatives or work with creators or creative partners to generate those creative.
And you mentioned TikTok creative, and not a lot of people have gotten their heads around as a business how to kind of adapt to this new form of short form video. And what would you say the general trends are, advice you'd give to a business trying to make videos and sell their product on TikTok?
Yeah. And I think for TikTok, you're going to see if the video is going to do well or not faster. So my general advice is to test on TikTok first and then see what works and scale that onto other platforms like Instagram and YouTube. And that would be my general advice for content creators as well. And just keep testing. So TikTok doesn't really penalize you for posting too much, whereas for Instagram or YouTube, if you keep posting a lot of different variations of similar concept, you may get penalized because they see that your videos don't perform as well. But that impact is a little bit smaller on TikTok. So generally you need higher volume of content on TikTok, but it also means that you can come as you are, be more raw and be more authentic. That's what people like. So instead of a super polished, sitting down, beautiful video, people prefer videos that are shot using your iPhone, videos that look like, oh my God, guys, like something just happened and you're walking on the street or you are in your car in a safe space, of course. That kind of videos do better because they feel more authentic and real and raw.
Yeah, the authenticity, everyone's craving that, and it's what does well. And so that kind of brings into us going into AI here. And first question I have is, what do you feel about OpenAI taking your name as their lead image video generator?
I should have bought the domain when I could. I literally interviewed with them 2 weeks before they announced the name. And I'm sad I didn't get the job. It would have been cool. But yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things happening. I don't think it'll necessarily change the original concept and the story, because with AI, a lot of things will start to look similar and users can tell, they can spot inauthenticity from a mile away. But I do think it can help generate and organize thoughts and ideas and help people research. And once the original concept is made, AI could help make it, add more variations to it for ad testing, as well as adding features that might be expensive to produce, but pretty generic. If you need scenes that you can insert into an overall ad story arc, it doesn't have to be the full thing that you rely on an AI for. I don't think it's that good yet.
So you mentioned applying for work at OpenAI. Was that one of the two companies, that and TikTok, that you were applying for at the time?
No, I was at TikTok, and actually they reached out for a head of marketing role. I talked to the recruiter and we didn't move forward after that. But yeah, I did interview. I have receipts.
Awesome. From your experience at TikTok and Meta, like, how are these social media companies using AI currently?
So AI is embedded in almost every aspect in a lot of the technologies we use, like from content recommendation algorithms, ad targeting, content moderation, and even creative tools for creators, whether it's music, text overlay, all these things. There's a lot of products that have AI embedded in them to make it more powerful. It's behind what you see in your feed and how advertisers connect with audiences.
Right. I mean, it's really just the algorithm is a form of AI.
Yeah, because I think each platform has their different models, but generally speaking, it's better for you if you're seeing videos that are in line with what you are interested in and your values. And also, of course, there's the issue of creating an echo chamber, but generally speaking, if I'm interested in certain topics, those are the videos that I'm more likely to engage. And if there are videos that my friends are watching, more so on Meta platforms, I'm more likely to be interested in them as well. So it's making your time spent more meaningful for you.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that people don't appreciate about how these algorithms work. It's like they're taking your data in a sense to just know what to feed you better and know what your interests are and your likes. I mean, do you really want to have a feed of stuff that you're not interested in? No. And that's why they need to do what they're doing. So yeah. In your view, how will AI be used more in the future?
I think it's really about personalization. So I've been in advertising for most of my career, 14, 15-year career, and personalization has always been a topic. We as advertisers, we want to be targeting you at the right time, right place. So right placement, whether that's a website or social media. And, the moment that you want to purchase something or you're thinking about something. And that's how a lot of these platforms and media publishers are funded and run. Like, they got to pay employees. And I think that people think it's creepy that advertisers and platforms are collecting data, but then, people also don't want to pay for subscription. So I don't think you can complain, like, unless you don't want to consume anything online or be willing to pay. I think it's a price you have to pay. And there are alternatives if you're opposed to that. But going back to your question about how will they be using AI in the future, I think it's about personalization, if you imagine AI that can predict your interests before you even know them, or create tailored content in real time and offer incentive, offer interactive AI driven experiences.
In your 15 years of experience in the tech industry here, where do you think these social media sites are going to be using AI in the future? How will they be using AI in the future?
Yeah, so I think AI will be used everywhere, not just tech, but healthcare, just about everything you touch, production, like manufacturing, all these things will be leveraging AI. So it's almost like asking, how do you think internet will change the future? So it'll just help with personalization. So you as a user are getting data or information that's more useful to you at the time. And from an advertising standpoint, they can better target you at the right moment when you're about to make a purchase. And they could also more accurately predict what you might be interested in before you know you're interested in them. So you mentioned you have a newborn and, in 2 to 3 months, like we know what you might be looking for online. And so we can start targeting you then and see what kind of content or ads that you're interacting with and further refine that.
That's very insightful. And so you mentioned there I just had a newborn. Like I posted about this, so obviously Meta knows that I've just had a newborn, and I feel like they've been doing this for a while already. Even sometimes, like I'll be talking to my wife, and then something I talked about like shows up in Instagram stories. I mean, how does that technology work? I read an article about it that like, are they really listening, and then they can like pull that stuff, or is it something else?
I don't think so. I don't believe that. Like, think of how heavy each audio file and video files are on your, as you're creating content. There's no way they can process all that data.
Right.
And you never consented to giving the voice. Like, there's no way to store this to begin with, let alone analyze. It's usually people are not that unique. I think people like to think they're unique. People think things that other people are thinking in similar situations, whether that's geolocation or life stage or your age, gender, what jobs you have, income bracket, like all these identifiers, like based on all of these things, they have a lot of data to see what type of topics that you might be interested in. So I don't think it's anybody listening to your conversation. I think it's a massive myth that exists on the internet.
You mentioned AI and social media getting more personalized. I already, like with AI, I kind of want my AI to know everything about me so that it's easier to talk with it, and it kind of remembers what I already know and what I've already done, so it can help me in the future. But so really, these social media companies are going to have all that information too, and that's probably their goal. I noticed that Meta is kind of making a strong pivot to this heavy personalization. Do you have any insight there on their strategy?
So their mission has always been around building community and creating connections. And to do that, having more data would be more useful to make that happen more easily.
So 6 years at Meta, and it was Facebook at the time, right? Or were you there for the switch?
I was there for the switch.
Nice. And what was it like being an employee at Meta?
I loved my time at Meta. The company's mission is really reflect across every facet of the company, where we really are encouraged to build a community with other employees and your team. And, if I talk to friends who are at Meta right now, post layoff, they're saying it's more cutthroat and more politics. But, I would say there are worse places to work. Meta is actually great. So like if anyone's like feels like they're suffering at Meta, like stay there, because I think it's tougher, much worse outside of Meta.
Well, that pivots well into my next question here is just there's been loads of layoffs. This year has not been great for the tech industry as far as jobs go. And what's your description of the environment right now? A lot of people have been laid off. What's your advice to people looking for a job in the tech industry?
I would say you have to be selfish. What I mean by that is we've seen that companies will fire you, lay you off in a second, even though they made you believe that this is a family. And I've always known this. So actually getting fired early on in your career is actually helpful. Then you prioritize building experiences and skill sets that actually serve you more so than it serves the company. So ideally, you're doing things that actually serve the company and the team and yourself. But if you have a choice between building skills or knowing how to do things that only work at this company, I would say try to avoid them as much as possible unless it helps you in a certain way. But you have to be more selective in what projects you take on. Think of your resume as a collection of experiences that you want to have to further your career. So from that regard, you have to really know what you want, that you want to build, have on your resume, and be more selfish.
Great. And so we'll kind of get into later about what your plans are now that you've left TikTok. And I want to shift into, we're both parents. You've got a 5-year-old, Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got 2 daughters now, a 2-year-old and a newborn. And so parenting and AI in this new age, it's completely different from what our parents had to do raising us. And I'm wondering, first, from technology perspective, like what's your screen time policy with your child?
I know from talking to pediatricians, usually up to an hour per day is what's recommended. I'm not saying you have to have them watch TV for an hour, but up to an hour is the recommendation, no more than that. We try to do less than 20 minutes per day, mostly because I have joint custody, I have 50-50, and I don't know what goes on the other house. So I want to make sure that I'm overcorrecting if there's behaviors that I would not be aligned with. And kids are actually pretty resilient. So if you start saying, hey, we don't do that in this house, or we don't watch that much TV, they adapt to it. And especially getting phones at dinner time or at restaurants, we don't do that. But also you have to think about that they're kids. I don't think it's fair for the adults to be having a fun conversation about, I don't know, the stock market and the politics when you are not giving the kids anything to entertain themselves. I think that's cruel. And like yell at them or whatever if they misbehave and throw them a phone. Well, I try to make an effort to bring things for him to do, whether it's little toys, puzzles, or crayons. And I bring more crayons because what the restaurant gives him is like 2 to 4 colors. So I try to pack them. And then when I do give him screens, usually I'll give him like the Duolingo ABC or something that's coloring. I recommend against using YouTube unsupervised. I also hate when he's watching I feel like these are really brain dumb videos where they're just playing with slime. It doesn't do anything. It's just dopamine boost. It's not doing anything for them. I don't like letting him watch those things. So I don't let him do unsupervised YouTube, even with YouTube Kids. But I think if he's watching TV, usually I have him watch Disney or something that I agree with the lesson of the movie up to 20 minutes after we are done eating and cleaning up and right before bedtime. And we try to watch it together as a family, next to each other.
Yeah, that seems all very sensible. It was interesting for us. We started maybe showing our daughter YouTube videos like songs, Baby Shark and Pololo, she's obsessed with here. But then, you show it to them and then she would just freak out when we put it away. And then she would be, throw a tantrum, and it's just like, whoa, we don't want that. That's not good. And so we just did have a no video policy here. And it's like, she doesn't have any idea, she's very happy just playing with her toys. And I think that's great. So we're kind of as long as we can, we're keeping her away from it. And then the other part of it is that she sees daddy on her phone all the time because I'm working. That's how I make a living. And then she sees all these other adults on their phones and she must think it's the coolest object that they have, but she just doesn't understand it yet.
I try to explain it to them. I talk about dopamine and you don't want this in the morning. We don't do TV at all in the morning, especially because you don't want to be starting your day with that heavy dose of dopamine inducing thing. And, they're probably going to be less excited and interested in doing things throughout the day. So that's another thing I try to keep in mind.
That's good advice for adults too, but it's just harder depending your line of work. I actually do want to backtrack a little bit here. So you're Korean, you're living in America. What was the journey here? Because you're a first generation immigrant here. Can you talk about your time in Korea? And I'm in Korea right now and you're in California. And growing up in Korea, why you moved to America and when?
I moved to the US in 2006 when I had just turned 16. And that was right after the first year of high school in Korea. And I always wanted to study abroad. So my mom actually sent me to Canada, New Zealand, Australia during summers to learn English and go to these ESL schools and do activities in the afternoon type of programs and living with local families. So I didn't live with Korean families, but local white families in America. Or when I went to Australia, I lived with an Aboriginal Australian lady. And I just really liked the cultural aspect of it, especially the dynamic between mom and dad in the household. I come from a very conservative family where women are expected to bring the men everything, even though, so my mom had a job and, made more, if not similar to my dad, and worked more hours than my dad, but she was still expected to do all the cooking. And even when we were having dinner, she would have to get up multiple times to get whatever's missing from the table. And I didn't like that at all, but it was a culture shock for me when I saw that the dad was cleaning up because the mom cooked. And like, it's so obvious now, but at that time, that was such a huge culture shock for me. So when I came back home from those trips, I would be very motivated to learn English because I felt like that would really open up doors to more societies with more gender equality.
Yeah.
And I begged my parents to let me go. And my argument was, you have two more kids, you're fine. Like, you're not going to be lonely. And if this doesn't work out, you still have two more kids. Like, you're kind of hedging and you've de-risked yourself by having three kids. So I went to a public school in California and then finished in a private school in Ohio.
Wow. So you went to the Midwest too.
Yeah, and I think that was a really good choice. I know if I had gone to a bigger city, because I'm a social person, I would have, started drinking early. I don't know, who knows if might have picked up on smoking, because that's what a lot of Koreans do at that time. But I'm glad I went to the Midwest. It's very high family value, and I went to Catholic school, so I felt like everyone was very nice and open to me and accepting me.
That's wonderful. And just your experience there of studying abroad and living abroad during the summers and your kind of formative years, so powerful. Such a great thing. And getting that motivation to learn English and improve your English and speak it well. I was an English educator for 10 years before the pandemic. And that's why I came to Korea, was to teach English. And here in Korea, they really teach to the test. They teach to get people into college to perfect grammar, reading comprehension and stuff. And then it's the speaking that people fall behind on. And even though like everybody, I know they've been through like 8 years of English education, at least, they're timid. They don't, want to speak English and make mistakes. And it's kind of a big problem. And it's something that you have to get over as a learner, that you do want to make mistakes. And you got to find the reasons that you want to practice, the motivation. That's not just the test.
Yeah, I think it's because the society as a whole in Korea, being different is not really appreciated. And everyone's pretty similar in terms of the way we look. We always look for what's the number one product in each category, and everyone wants it. In return, I think people are more judgmental towards each other as opposed to embracing diversity. Yeah, everyone's talking about other people's test scores, which college they're going to, what jobs they're having, how much they must be making, what kind of cars they're driving, what kind of purses they're carrying. I do think it's a pretty stressful society. I wish people celebrated and embrace more diversity.
I agree. I think that the younger generations, the newer generations are seeing that, and they're kind of rebelling against it. And especially, certainly the conservative values of the woman's role in society that you mentioned, that I don't think any woman wants to sign up for that anymore in Korea.
Yeah, no one. Yeah, so I'm hopeful for the future.
Well, great. I'm glad we touched on that background and your pivot to moving to America. What do you love about America? I mean, why did you decide to live there?
I think it's the opportunities. So I am very much middle class in Korea, and I feel like class mobility is worse in Korea.
Mm.
And I feel like Americans are more like live and let live, I guess, like let people be instead of living life for others, like you live for your own.
Yeah, certainly much more independent.
Yeah, independent. And I'm not saying it's a perfect place, but I also do think it's a better place for working moms. There's a lot of rules and processes. Discrimination still happens. A lot of people don't get the promotions that they deserve during maternity leave, etc. It does set women a little bit backwards, even in the US, but not as much as in Korea. So it's a much better country to be in as a working mom. And for kids too, I have friends' kids who are similar age as my son. Their English homework is harder than my son's regular homework, which is also in English. But a lot of them, they have like such bad manners, because I don't think school or the parents prioritize being a decent human being over studies. And I think that's really unfortunate. I'm not saying I met every kid in Korea, but from my experience, I've seen that American parenting tends to emphasize being a good independent person and being a kind person as opposed to in Korea, where they heavily emphasize just the grades and getting ahead.
All right, let's shift back. So parenting and AI, we talked about the screen time there. How are you talking with your child about AI?
I haven't talked to him about AI at all, actually.
Okay. Well, how does this change education for him when he can go and ask an AI and he's going to be able to like verbally ask it pretty soon, just little device, it's your speak to Alexa, and just get the answers that he wants. And you can maybe even prompt AI to engage with Jackson to, teach him as well.
So yeah, he does ask Google for jokes, but I don't think it's necessarily AI to search results. I do think that with any new technology, instead of rejecting it, it's better to get ahead and learn how to leverage it for yourself and for your career, or whether you're building a company. It's, I think, always better to be ahead of the curve when it comes to new technology. Yeah, you can be against it, but the world's moving on with or without you. So I don't think it's prudent to be like, oh, I hate that, I'm never letting my kid do this. So instead, it's better to equip him with what he needs to know and how to better leverage technologies available, as opposed to being against something.
Right. I mean, obviously, I'm the host of an AI podcast, so I'm very much embracing this new technology. But, it's the next wave. It's like internet. It's like mobile devices, the AI, and it's going to hit every industry. It's going to change so much. And what's great about it is that the aspect of it is it's changing so quickly that anybody, even if you haven't been paying attention, the moment you start paying attention, it's like you're on the same level as everybody else, because it's changing so much that everybody else, you're constantly updating yourself with the new capabilities. And then just the advice of just trying to know, like, make sure you have ChatGPT on your phone or Claude and ask it questions, use it instead of Google, and start being familiarized with, what it can do, because it's incredible technology.
So I'm already doing that myself, but I haven't really spent the time to explain about AI to my son, but I should probably start doing that. But he doesn't go on laptops. He doesn't really use phones. So I think we have a little bit of time. But generally speaking, I think it's important to teach him how to leverage these things. But generally, when I think about what activities to put him in and how he should be spending his time, I think about more creativity driven activities, because I think that's much harder to replace by AI. And your AI output is, only as good as your input. And creativity is, what's going to differentiate one essay from the other, and, one answer to a math problem to another. So I think he does a lot of painting and drawing, which he loves to do. And as he gets older, we'll still work on his writing.
No, absolutely. It's probably just like the screen time, where it's like the longer you can kind of keep them away from those dopamine hits, and like the better, and from the creativity perspective, like even as a content creator, like, oh, I can just have AI write this post for me and like change a little bit. And then you kind of lose that creativity. And if you start off with that ability, like, oh, I can just have AI write my paper for me, I can just have AI answer this question for me, why do I need to figure it out myself? That's a bad, habit to get in. And you got to kind of figure out how to do it yourself first, so you have that experience before you rely on AI.
Yeah, because the output is not going to be good if you just rely on AI 100%. And even right now, like, you need to be really specific and know what you're looking for. And how could you even tell if the answer is good or not if you don't know how to do it yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like AI and language learning and translation is like, obviously, large language models. This is language is a key component of AI and its ability to translate. And now the capabilities are really, really good. I interviewed a CEO recently who has this product. It's for business Zoom meetings. And I tested out with my wife. My wife was speaking Korean to her and she was speaking English. And it just mutes the person on the screen and just does the translation for them. And so
in audio or just the text?
The audio. And so she's there speaking in English. For my wife, it's muted and coming back in Korean, in the AI translated Korean. And Hansel said it was really good, like business level. She was kind of curious if it could be a little more informal. And the only issue I saw was that there's a lag and you got to get used to kind of like waiting a little bit for the translation. Otherwise, it seemed very, very good. How do you see AI changing translation work and how people from different cultures or languages speak to each other?
I already see this happening. So TikTok has these features to translate real time. Like when you're watching TikTok videos, it'll show you in text what they are, and it happens pretty quickly. And I think other platforms are starting to roll out those features. But in terms of voice, that's also happening. So there's technologies where you input a short form video and it understands what it's saying and translates, and you can choose the voice you want, and it also would change the mouth shape so it looks more natural. So that product already exists on the market, and I think it's actually pretty exciting. It opens up a lot of doors of like economic opportunities for those who typically haven't had it. Think about more cross-border transactions. But I do think on the organic ad side, or organic posting side, platforms could do a better job at letting the account holder to change the direction, change the targeting for the videos to be consumed when it's an organic video, so they could serve more audiences.
That reminds me of Meta's release of their product that you just described, and how I think they're starting with Spanish and English, and it was like a Spanish reel that was translated into English, and the lips changed to match the English, and it was her voice too. So it was like a voice clone of it. English is already kind of a very dominant language around the world, but like people that are speaking maybe a less popular language or less widely spoken language, to be able to translate that into English and have their content and message be open to, you know, all of the English speakers is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Have you used AI translation in Korea with like casually? Have you gone to, I mean, I suppose you don't need to because you speak both languages fluently, but have you had experience? Do you have any anecdotes of people using AI translation?
So I use AI translation quite a bit when I make YouTube videos. So I try to upload every other week, and usually on my vlogs or career chats, I have English and Korean subtitles. And my editor would download the scripts either in English or Korean, and I review them for accuracy. And then we run it through ChatGPT. And I also specify what type of tone, like in terms of formality, it should be. And then we review it together to see which parts to keep and delete. It just makes my job that much easier. I do have someone on my team to review the video translation, like a bilingual person who's very well versed in both, to make sure it sounds more natural and sounds like something I would say. And yeah, and then I do the final review before sending it.
Wow. That saves a bunch of time, and it allows your content to be viewed by more people. So that's great. So Korean language over the last decade, I mean, when I came here in 2015, and it was like Gangnam Style, kind of like the global hit. And that really, I feel like that put Korea on the map from the K-pop scene. The K-pop and K-dramas have just exploded. Squid Games, you kind of name it, it's everywhere. And how have you seen the evolution of your country's language and culture evolve over the last decade?
I think it's so cool to see, and who knows how long this will last, but I'm enjoying it for the time being. You know, I think in college and high school, I think Japan was really hot. You know, if you think about Gwen Stefani, like Harajuku Girl, like I was in a way jealous, right? Like, wow, the Japanese students, like everyone think they're so cool. And I don't think we ever got that treatment necessarily. But right now, like Korea is it. And I think that's cool, but at the same time, like it's not gonna last forever. Just like the coolness of Japan culture has declined over time. It's still a very cool country, but yeah, we get a little competitive between these two countries usually.
I think that the Korean entertainment's way better. I think that their production value and their storytelling is very good. Parasite was the other, like winning the best picture and best director is awesome to see.
I think Koreans are generally super hardworking, and like every time I work with Koreans, like their work quality is so good. And I do think there's talent arbitrage opportunity. I do think that average Korean worker works harder and they work smarter than an American worker, even by like paying standard, to be honest with you. But they get paid way less and have worse benefits. So I do think, you know, with the help of language, AI, I do think there's talent arbitrage opportunity that could happen.
Yeah, definitely. Conversational translation. Like I was very hopeful when OpenAI released their advanced voice mode, and like I could talk and it'd be like a translation. And I was like, because my Korean's not great. No, it's like I understand a lot, but the speaking is hard. And I was very hopeful that magical device would, but it's still, there's a social stigma about, having a phone between two people in real life and like waiting for the translation. And then you have something you want to add quick, but then the AI doesn't pick that up. And you really have to kind of be more formulaic about the conversation. And so I think there's just trying to think of what device will be there. It's like the AR glasses where it kind of translates everything that I'm hearing in the real world, or maybe something on my wrist that, can do the same thing. I think that it's hard when you're just like looking at a phone and relying on the phone.
I think generally it's easier to just add on the technology to existing hardware people usually have. Like I think AirPods could be a good one. I actually submitted a startup idea for Startup Chile like years ago with my mentor slash friend who's now engineering head at OpenAI for the growth team. We would use headphones to help people who are hard of hearing.
Oh, right. Yeah, I saw that Apple ad that was just released and helping the hard of hearing for sure. Let's go into Love After Divorce. That's how you came on my radar. My wife and I watched the show. Was it about a year ago now? It's a great format. It's a Korean reality show. 10 recent divorcees coming in, 5 guys, 5 girls. They're looking for a new chance of love and meeting new people. And it was well done. And I thought you were one of the most compelling characters, and I think a kind of fan favorite. And I'm wondering, how did that experience, change your life?
The filming itself was very therapeutic for me because we're getting interviews like in the confessionals with the writers and, just letting all things out. That was really helpful for me to heal. And after it started airing, I think it brought me a global platform that allowed me to build a community and connect with people who I would not have met otherwise, or people who I wouldn't have met this soon in life. I think a lot of people I met, I probably would have met them later in life, but I was able to meet them sooner, if that makes sense. It's been a really great experience. It's been humbling and empowering at the same time, because I do have a lot of people who DM me that they worked up the courage to actually go through the divorce or get out of unfortunate situations due to like the life that I'm showing them, that it's possible to rebuild life after, and there could be a better, more amazing life after a difficult one.
I'm curious about, because, divorce kind of has like a stigma around it. And so that was like, even when I tell people, oh, Love After Divorce is a great show, they're like, oh, really? Why a show about that? That's kind of, what's the most reaction you get from people when you say that you were a star in Love After Divorce?
I think that shows in a way destigmatizing divorce and people who are divorced, because, we're normal people.
It happens, And I think it's a great show that probably should be copied to other languages, and they can do the American version and whatnot. My other favorite character is Dewey. I really liked Tom.
Yeah.
Updates. Who have you seen most recently of the squad?
I see Tom, Dewey, Ricky. I saw Tom in Vegas. I saw Benita and Ricky in LA recently, the last month.
Nice. And Jerome and Benita are still strong. Heejin and Jimmy are married now, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's awesome. Tom, I loved his everything's okay, his spiritual yoga mentality. So great. And you have a new boyfriend now?
Yeah.
You want to tell us who he is?
He's great. I think he really compliments me in ways that I need. He's super calm and introverted. And I think he keeps me grounded because I'm kind of all over the place, and he's very calm. He has a very calming energy about him.
I'm curious, does he also work in the tech industry?
Yeah, he works at Meta. So we have a lot of mutual friends through work.
Okay, let's get into your plans for the future. Going back to your kind of fame from this Netflix show, it did really well. And so your inbox and your inbound must be quite good. How have you adapted to, and how do you manage all the people trying to message you and all the opportunities kind of knocking on your door? And, I'm very thankful that you came back to me and wanted to do this podcast. And I imagine there's a lot of people like that trying to get your time. And how do you manage that?
I try to evaluate based on their sincerity, and does it have to be me? That's something I think about. And so if someone's asking for a career advice and it doesn't seem like they've done much research and their career thus far is not that impressive, and I have to say no, or I don't have time to make the response. But then if someone sends me a very heartfelt, long message and their career up to this point, speaks for itself, then I might engage. But generally speaking, I have to decide it based on the ROI of my time. Will this
For
person
sure.
appreciate my advice? Will this person go somewhere where they may be in a position to help me or help others? And is it just, oh, let me just pick your brain on stuff for free? When I get that vibe, I don't really engage. And I get a lot of like, I'm locked out of TikTok. I don't have time to respond to all of them. It's not necessarily my job to do that.
It's like this social hierarchy almost of how the social media works. And as you kind of rise up and you get more in, and just, I used to be the person kind of messaging people and getting turned down. And now there's a lot of people messaging me. I mean, and this is like nothing in comparison to you, or and then for yours to the people more famous than you. And I just think it's interesting how it all works. And this kind of, it really is this new game of social engagement and, growing your accounts and reach and followers. I mean, you're really strong on Instagram, over 100,000 followers. What's your social media strategy going forward?
It is not my intent to become a full-time social media influencer. I think I have enough followers to do what I want to do. I don't think I'll ever get to 1 million, but I do want to share content that resonates with people, whether that's giving them hope that there's love and life after divorce. And I share a lot of career tips for junior, mid-level career professionals. I have a book coming up on that topic, which I'm writing right now. And also share lots of tips on cooking and beauty, because I want to show working moms that, you can do it all. You can try to look after yourself and take care of yourself while you take care of others. And you just got to be smart about how you spend time. And there's some products that I recommend that's helped me. So I want it to be useful and helpful for others who want to try to do it all.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Inspiring others and giving advice and value. And I think that a lot of, people get that from you. The book that is coming out, you said it's on like career advice for women?
Yeah, it'll be career advice. So if you know the book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg.
Right, yes.
It's like that, but more tactical. Actually, this is how you would write the email to ask for that offer negotiation, or this is what you would say if someone steals your work in a meeting, something super tactical and tangible people could immediately do. Because a lot of times I think that's the missing connection. Like, how do you actually deal with in these situations?
What do you do if somebody steals your work in a meeting?
You have to not make it look combative, but make it seem like you're offering help, or just add on like, as I was researching this, or as I was leading this segmentation work, we noticed X, Y, and Z. So you somehow slide in that you actually led it. And at the end of the meeting, you could also follow up with written form of communication, whether that's a group chat or email or whatever's customary to your organization, and say, come to me for questions. On the surface, it looks like you're making yourself available for answers. Hey, I'm about to give you even more of my time to help you with your questions or whatever you're trying to do with this specific project. But on the one layer deeper, I'm actually telling people I led it, so I have the most information.
So much politics and business here. And I also saw that you're doing like speaking and you're giving speeches. And we have our next AI conference is in Las Vegas at the end of May. And if you ever want to develop your thoughts on AI and parenting, or AI language trans, AI and tech, let me know. And I'd be happy to try to get you into the speaker roster for our Imagine AI Live conference, May 28th to the 30th. So what's next for you now that you've left TikTok?
I'm actually working on launching a marketing advisory firm based in the US to help Korean lifestyle brands to grow in the US. I see lots of great products and brands coming out of Korea. I do think a lot of them need help with go-to-market, product development in a way that makes sense and appeals to the American audience. And I am exactly that person because I'm very bicultural. I understand both cultures and I understand what sells in the US. And leveraging my expertise and experience from Netflix, Meta, and TikTok, I would love to help them really grow in the US and become mainstream.
I love it. That's great. That's a wonderful niche for you. Well, yeah. Sora, thank you so much for coming on the Imagine AI podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I hope we can do it again another time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Good luck with
Thank
the
you.
new board.
Oh, yeah,
Bye.
thanks so much.